What up? What up? What up? We are back. Been a long time. SEC Focus Podcast had a little brief hiatus. We've seen a lot of things happen since we were last here. We talked a lot about the CFP the last time we talked. We talked a lot about Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State. Obviously, we know how that ended. Georgia winning 65-7. But tonight, we're not here to talk about that. We've moved on. Georgia is now your back-to-back champion. So we have moved on to SEC basketball, as now we're just a few weeks away from SEC baseball. We're going to get into a lot more of that soon. But for now, we're talking college basketball, SEC college basketball. And I put out my power rankings like I do every Monday. Caught a lot of heat this morning. A lot of heat was coming at me for my rankings, my power rankings. And the only thing I can think is that people get so caught up in being reactionary, or they see one game and think we got to just change the whole outlook on things. Well, I look at it a little bit differently. So the way I did it, my power rankings are pretty simple. Starting at the top, I kept Alabama 1, and people kept saying, how can you put Alabama number 1? They just got blown out by Oklahoma, and they lost by 24, and you can't be a number 1 ranking if you lose by 20 plus, and you can't be a champion, all this other stuff. So let's talk about it. The reason that I kept Alabama number 1, and it's pretty simple, it's because they have the best resume of any team in the SEC. You got to look at the SEC season in totality. You got to look at the whole season in totality, and Alabama has the best resume. It's just as simple as that. Do I think that Tennessee right now is playing better than Alabama based on what we saw this last weekend? Sure, they played better this last weekend. Those teams are going to get a chance to play, but people forget, even my own fan base, I'm a Tennessee fan, that Tennessee has had games where they didn't look good either. They got blown out by Colorado. They got beat by Kentucky at home. So I think that, you really just got to look at it like this. Alabama, before they played Oklahoma on Saturday, nobody was questioning whether they were the best team in the SEC at all. It looked like they had actually created a bit of a gap between themselves and the rest of the SEC. And then all of a sudden we see them lose a game to Oklahoma. And now it's just like, oh, Katie bar the door. They're an NIT team. Come on now. Let's not be reactionary when it comes to our takes. So starting at the top, Alabama number 1, Tennessee number 2. Is Tennessee building a resume that puts them on the 1 line? Absolutely they are. I think that what you're going to see from Tennessee is the continued play. What I was worried about with Tennessee, I said this since the season first started, their defense was going to be elite. Did I think it would be one of the best defenses historically, analytically, that we've ever seen? I probably didn't, but I knew that Rick Barnes' team was going to be good defensively. My question for them was always on the offensive end of the ball. I still have some concerns when you get into a more half-court environment in the tournament. Who's going to go get you that bucket? But they're answering the bell. They played a team this past Saturday that was a top 10 team, and it was really never close. I know the score was only 11. Tennessee beat Texas by 11. They beat Rick Barnes' old team. A lot was made about that. But what you saw more so than that was that Tennessee had Olivia Kamwa was absolutely brilliant. Zakai Ziegler was brilliant. And what Rick Barnes did 4 or 5 games ago after the Kentucky game, he went to a 4-guard lineup. And since he's gone to the 4-guard lineup, the offensive production has absolutely skyrocketed. They're still just as elite defensively. So I think Rick Barnes has actually found something that's working for him, and, probably stick with that. Number 3, got just as much heat for this as I did for keeping Alabama number 1, was Texas A&M. I understand what people are going to say. This team came into the SEC play. They were like a 500 team. They hadn't beaten anybody. But look at what has happened since then. Did anybody have that team coming into the SEC season at the end of December having this record this late into the season? We're at the end of January, and they're right there. They are right there in the SEC, and they got some good wins. So then I got Auburn. I think that Auburn, and I'll be the first to admit this, I had Auburn middle of the pack in the SEC. I wasn't seeing what a lot of people were seeing. I didn't see that Auburn was going to, be towards the top of the SEC. Obviously, they get a UT is always regular season champs. Daniel Irvin coming in with the heat. That guy's a Tigers fan, so we'll get to you in a second. Let's run through this. Auburn number 4, Kentucky number 5. Now, this is the one that I can admittedly say. I went Kentucky 5, Missouri 6. And then I had some heat. A Missouri fan came at me with some facts, and I think he was right. I think that if I could redo this again, but I don't admit mistakes, I think that I would definitely put Missouri at 5, Kentucky at 6, simply because The records are pretty similar. Missouri has several top 25 wins. Kentucky has one, and that's against Tennessee. Also, Missouri smoked Kentucky, beat them by 13. So if I could redo this again, and I will next week. So Missouri fans, hang on. If your team keeps doing what they do, but we've also seen that Missouri can get blown out too, right? They have a couple of double-digit losses, a couple of 20-point losses. They even have a 30-point loss or a 28-point loss. So Missouri fans were coming at me, and I respected it. You made your argument. You were even right. However, I'm not going to admit that again. So I went Kentucky, Missouri, then Arkansas. I think Arkansas really had a chance to steal one this past weekend and let it slip away, get a wide open look at the end of the game and come up with just side of the backboard. Not a good way to end that season. But what I do think is going to happen, I think Arkansas has played improved over the past, week or two, 10 days. And also what I think is they're going to find some, and what Musselman has proven over the last couple of years is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I think they're going to continue to improve, and I expect them to be a dangerous team, come March time. Number 8, I went with Florida. So extremely disappointing effort this past weekend. They played a really tough team in Kansas State, so I don't think I'm going to take a lot from that. I think that Florida's just been kind of meh, and I think that once you get to this part of the SEC, it's a lot of meh. I think that when we started, I said the SEC would get 6 teams into the tournament. And looking down at it, I still think it could get maybe even 7, but I'm still going to go with the number of 6. So Florida at 8, Georgia at number 9. And I had some Georgia fans coming at me today saying, how could you say that we're only number 9? I mean, we've done this. I want to make this very clear. For Mike White to have come in and taken over what he did when he lost his top 6 starters, lost every meaningful piece that Georgia had. By the way, they were a horrible team last year, and he lost everybody. Maybe that was a good thing. For them to be where they are right now is a testament to how good of a job he has done. Do they have the talent right now to be in the middle or even the upper class of the SEC? Absolutely not. But are they competing on a lot of nights? Probably even going to win some games that they shouldn't win based on talent alone? Absolutely. So for them to be at 9, absolutely. Absolutely. So number 10, and this one I kind of went back and forth on too, and Chris kind of came at me saying, did I forget that Vanderbilt beat Georgia? No, I did not. But I also didn't forget that Vanderbilt is a sub 500 team, and that Vanderbilt, I mean, they did beat Georgia. That's true. But when I don't look at the head-to-head as being the tiebreaker when teams don't have similar records. Now, when teams have similar records, absolutely, head-to-head is where you have to go. But when they don't, I got to look at, again, the totality of the season, the wins, the losses, and all that. So I got Vanderbilt at 10. Mississippi State. Chris Jans kind of took over a tough spot too, right, coming in. He has had some good wins, had a really, 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 really good win this past Saturday, a win that I did not see coming. So for them to get off the schneid, stays hating on Florida. That's true. I do stay hating on Florida. Number 12. And I think this is where, so I talked about the meh, right? And that goes from probably Florida, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. That's just kind of, I mean, those teams they're all right. Decent, maybe. But then when we get to these last 3 teams, we're just talking straight bad, homie. I'm putting LSU at 12, and we can argue the 12, 13, 14 order. It really doesn't matter to me. A lot of people get caught up in who's last and who's 12. Who really cares? But I got them LSU, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. The one that stands out to me the most is Ole Miss because Kermit has been there several years. He's had a lot of time to get his system in place. He's had a lot of time to get his players there, and he's flat out underperformed. I mean, it hasn't even been close. This guy has had every opportunity. Last year had some injuries. This year coming in, you get healthy players back, and they've just been god-awful. I mean, they just have not been good at all. So South Carolina, I think that coming in, we all knew this was going to be a tough season for them. They did get Gigi Jackson. He does give them a fighting chance, and they were fighting. They did beat Kentucky, which is probably why I should drop Kentucky again below Missouri, because South Carolina did get their one SEC win is against Kentucky. So I think we always thought that was going to be a long season. So, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of where I am, 1 through 14 after this past week. But specifically, I want to talk about the last Big 12 SEC challenge for pretty much the entire season. I think when it started out, people were trying to say, oh, could the SEC be up there as far as one of the elite conferences in college basketball? And, I mean, while I do think that SEC has some good top-heavy talent in basketball, I don't think that they are in any way top to bottom comparable to the Big 12. Just my opinion, and I think that bared out, right, Saturday. The SEC goes 3-7 against the Big 12. And a lot of the games, just the Big 12 just kind of out-toughed them, right? Kansas goes into Kentucky, into Rupp. And I was watching that game, and Rupp Arena was just, they were absolutely rocking when that game started. Kansas was unfazed. So Kansas also goes into Missouri first part of the year. That arena was rocking, sold out. They were pumped up playing Kansas again, their old conference title. Kansas goes in there and beats them by 30, right? So I think that, that just the conference top to bottom, when you look at it, you got a lot of teams in the Big 12. I think that could be a 7-8 bid league. I just think top to bottom, you're looking at them being a little tougher than the SEC. And I know that's hard. That's hard for us to admit, right, in the SEC, but not in football, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're a Big 12 fan on here and you're thinking, oh, man, he just said the Big 12 is better in basketball, well, that's it. That is it. Who is this? Somebody said LSU over Tennessee in any sport. Wendell Nichols. You know the problem with that, Wendell? And Jim, if you're still listening, just tune out right now, because this guy came at me with this, right? It actually doesn't happen like that. So if you look at it, the last 6 times they played in baseball, Tennessee won. Last time they played in football, Tennessee blew them out at home. Last time they played in basketball, Tennessee blew them out. So no, it's not. It's not LSU over Tennessee in any sport. They're gonna get a shot to play them again in baseball. Me and my co-host Jim Cross are going to be down there for the game. Women's basketball going right now. Look, LSU women's basketball is cold, man, going cold. So when I got on here, it was a pretty close game. I expected LSU to blow the women out, if I'm being honest. However, go Vols, baby. So in any sport, though, come on, Wendell. Come on. So another thing when we're talking about basketball, Coach V with the win. That is true, Nikki. Coach V always with the win. Always with the win. So the new AP poll comes out today. And I was a little bit, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but when the AP poll comes out, Purdue got every single first place vote in the AP and in the coaches poll. That really didn't surprise me. 21-1, probably got the player of the year. That team's really rocking. Tennessee moved up not only in the AP poll, but in the coaches poll. They are now 2, moving up from 4. Houston comes in at 3, Alabama 4. And I think when we started this thing, I think it got up to 6 or 7 SEC teams in the top 25. And I should have counted this before I came on live. But obviously we have 2 in the top 5, with Tennessee at number 2, Alabama number 4. The next SEC team on here, man, the next SEC team that I see, and I could be missing one, is Auburn, all the way down at 25. So there's only 3 SEC teams in the top 25 now. So I think that, a long way to go. A long way to go. Chris just coming in with the save. A little late, Chris, but I was there. Also, when you look at KenPom, and I know that a lot of people don't use KenPom, but I think for analytics and statistics, KenPom's probably the best bang for your buck. And I'm probably pointing this out too, because Tennessee is number 1 in KenPom, took that over after this last weekend. So that's the most important poll, and the only poll we should ever listen to is the one that has Tennessee first. You know what I'm saying? So again, I think that obviously I got a couple Florida fans saying I'm hating on them. And I think that I've been honest about the whole thing with Florida from the beginning. I think that he came in with a pretty tough situation. But the one thing I will say about it, he didn't come in with a bare cupboard. He had talent. So if you're asking me if I think that they've underachieved, 100%. I think that they should have more wins. When you look at the standings for Florida and you look at the fact that some of their losses, it is really, really tough. Let's see. Let's just go into that. If you look at the standings right now, Florida, you're 5-3 in the SEC, 12-9 overall. So 21 games in, what is that? You got about 11 or 12 games left, and you're 3 games over 500. I just think I expected a little bit more out of Florida. They're beating some teams now. So the loss, they lost to FAU. It turns out FAU's really, they're pretty good. Jim says Florida sucks in everything. There's my boy. Somebody, we need Billy D back. Billy Donovan ain't walking through that door. He is not walking through that door. Nikki, now I got people going at it. Shut it. That's LSU. Come on. So when you look at, Florida has played Oklahoma. They took an L. Played UConn, took an L. That's a 21-point loss. Played Auburn, took an L. A&M was another loss. And then they kind of went on a little bit of a run there. They beat Georgia, they beat LSU, a couple bad teams. Then the best win that Florida's had all year was Missouri. That's kind of what worries me about Missouri is do you see some inconsistency? Because I think if you're looking at the season that they've had and some of the teams they beat, Missouri should probably win that game against Florida, but they didn't. And then a loss to A&M at A&M, and I think everybody's been pleasant or surprised. Yes, let's relive that nightmare. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to make Florida fans remember. And don't forget, Florida's next games, man, it's getting pretty tough. I agree with our guy Cody that Archie win is keeping LSU higher than they should be, losing by 40, 18, 22, and 20 in consecutive games, by far the worst stretch of any team in the SEC. Chris, I've said this to you before, but I think that what you need to do is go look at some of the other losses that people have had because you're calling out LSU, but LSU actually has wins. The teams that you're comparing them against don't. We're talking about one-win teams, so it's not even comparable. Yes, does LSU have blowout losses? Absolutely. Sure, they do. But like I said, we're talking about the bottom, like 10 through 14. Who really cares? I mean, doesn't really matter. They're all bottom feeders at this point. And then I think that, if you're Florida, you get a win against Mississippi State, and it's a pretty decent Mississippi State team. Do have some talent. You get the win over South Carolina, which is a blowout win. But if you're Florida, that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to blow South Carolina out. And then I think that you go to Kansas State, top 5 team. I don't really see, I saw a lot in the chat that about Florida and how disappointed some of their fans were in the effort. You lose them by 14 to Kansas State. That's a team that could be a Final Four team. And Florida's just not there. Even if they were playing up to their potential, they're probably not there. Jim says, I might cancel our episode in 43 minutes. That's TCU just because you attacked LSU. We do have, for the first time ever, on In Off the Bench podcast coming up, and that'll be released tomorrow at 8:30 Central Time for all those that don't live in the best time zone. We have a TCU baseball player, so be on the lookout for that. Our producer will chop it up and get that out tomorrow. Man, you know what? I say tomorrow. It used to be tomorrow. My dude's getting so good now. He edits them, puts them out same night. It's like FedEx, same day delivery. So just going through the standings, again, I had Alabama at the top of the power rankings, and going through the standings of the SEC, Alabama's still number 1 at 8-0. Tennessee is 2 at 7-1. Tied with A&M is also at 7-1. Auburn at 6-2. Kentucky 5-3. Florida 5-3. Missouri and Georgia both at 4-4. Vanderbilt 3-5, also tied with Arkansas at 3-5. And then you have a list: Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, and South Carolina all at 1-7, all 7 games back of Alabama. So I think that we kind of talked about this before a couple weeks ago, was that I felt like there was a little bit of a separation. And when I said it probably a month ago, I thought there was a separation between the top 3 or 4 and the rest. And I think that what we've seen, even though A&M has come on strong, they are 7-1. I feel like the separation is Alabama and Tennessee right now from the field. If I was to look at this long term, my expectation is that A&M would probably drop back down. I do know this, that I said this when I wrote my my piece to start the season, that Buzz has always made the tournament in his 4th year at a job. This is his 4th year at Texas A&M. Fully expect that trend to continue. I expect them to be a bubble team. So Gary Parrish said it's Bama and Tennessee, and then a drop off is huge. Jim, I got a problem though with GP, man. He keeps on. He don't put my boys up there. He's kind of got my boys drop. He's got them at 5, I think. And it's just been like, I don't think they've made it into his top 5 all year. So, I think that it's because he's from Memphis. Maybe he's a Memphis graduate. He's not feeling it or something. I'm not real sure. But yeah, just kind of going through that. If you, that's when I kind of talk about the 6 to 7 bid teams. I think Alabama and Tennessee are locks, probably on the 1 line. I don't think A&M is going to stay up there. Auburn, tournament team. Kentucky, tournament team. Florida has a chance. They got a chance to kind of stay on the bubble. I think they do got to pick up some wins, because when you look at their record right now, 12-9, they really need to start. They need to get going now. Guess who isn't making the tournament in his 4th year? But if you get in by saving timeouts, he is your guy. Yeah, I think that's Jerry Stackhouse. But listen, Jerry Stackhouse has got a burner account. So Jerry, if you're out there, you're listening on Twitter, or you retweet this, go ahead, man. I think that Chris has some thoughts about it. He thinks that you keep your timeouts and that you're not a very good coach and that you should be fired. However, we all know that before the season, you got an extension, you got a raise. For what reason, nobody can still figure out. And then Chris even attended your preseason barbecue where he ate the meat you cooked, man. Now look at him out here. See, I tell you what, man. Wait, didn't Sonny say that? We got a lot of interaction in the comments, and I love it. We got Nikki and Jim kind of going at each other, that Florida / TCU versus LSU rivalry. I kind of dig it. But I lost it there. I was trying to answer to a text, but I think that talking about baseball for just a second, switching gears just a little bit. I think that was Jim. Jim will correct me really quick. I think it's 18 days until college baseball kicks off. If you are a college baseball fan, a couple things you need to do for us. First thing you need to do, go to Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, find In Off the Bench podcast. That is where myself, Jim Cross, and Daniel Ball host a podcast. It's not just college baseball, but that is what we focus on specifically during college baseball season and in the off season. Tonight we have on Savage from TCU. We've had on, Paul Skeens, the Tommy Whites of the world. Obviously, the Evan Russells have been on there. Everybody that you can name in the SEC, Dylan Cruz. We've really had a star-studded lineup. Jim does a great job at that. Now we're kind of venturing out. We've had South Carolina on a few times. We've had Alabama. We've had the Zane Dentons. The Chase Dolanders, the Chase Burns. A lot of Tennessee guests because we got taste, right? A lot of Tennessee, a lot of LSU. But what we have not had on, and we'll continue to not have on apparently, is Florida Gators. That's Jim's thing. And the Vanderbilt Commodores. And I think that's really a Tim Corbin thing, but we're kind of here for it. Brock. Look at this. Jim, he's typing it up for me. I can just read it right off the screen. Brock Wilken from Wake Forest. That's February 8th. Ty Floyd, LSU, February 13th. Brady Slavens from Arkansas, February 15th. Cade Smith, Mississippi State, February the 20th. Macy Hodge, that's Mississippi State soccer. We're here for women's sports, baby. Let's go. Dustin Dickerson from Southern Miss. Brooks Auger, Pico Cone. We got some more Mississippi State. Charlie Orsini, that's Tennessee softball. I'm pretty sure that's the Aussie. You're going to want to listen just for the accent alone. Tennessee softball, again, women's sports. Griffin Merritt, Tennessee baseball, stud, of course. Zachary Leach, we're going Missouri baseball. Somebody just said Jim Cross loves the Gators, so Jim's probably actually going to cancel the episode now. So if you're into college baseball, definitely check that out. Also, the next thing you do, go to College Baseball Smack. Obviously, this is SEC Focus podcast, but College Baseball Smack, we focus on college baseball there. Chris Keenhold kind of runs that group. Got a group of Merry Misfits over there. So if you like college baseball, that's your thing. And then Chris says, so will this be the beginning of the Alabama drop-off that we see nearly every year? That's absolutely not true. We've proven that wasn't true time and time again. I think once they get past the 8, they have opened somewhere in the 11-15 wins with 2 to 3 losses and then limp to the end. I think Mississippi State should have won last week, and the lifeless game is their no. There's absolutely no cause for concern. And when you're talking about the drop-off last year, you saw that they had 2 or 3 guys go out for the season with injury. And then, of course, we've gone over year by year. There actually hasn't been a drop-off in their performance. They've performed extremely well. So he's been building this thing. Nate Oates has proven himself to be one of the best coaches in the SEC. Do I think there's a drop-off for the number 4 team who hasn't lost an SEC game? No, I do not feel that way. They have the best freshman and probably the best basketball player in the country in Brandon Miller. No, I do not. We will be releasing the College Baseball Smack preseason top 25 in the coming days. That was a lot. A lot of things went into that. All the admins over there at College Baseball Smack, plus Jim Cross. We put all of our top 25s in. Chris did a really good job of weighting those out. Point system, it went up there, so we can't wait for you to see that and argue over who you think number 24 and 25 should be. If you're anything like Chris, you're going to care about what number 10 is, what number 11 is, number 12, 13, 14. However, Mississippi State and Ole Miss booty at basketball, not baseball. This is true. I mean, those are your last 2 college baseball champions. You got to give them their flowers. We were talking about it today. I don't remember who I was talking to, but if you are, which would you rather have, right? You saw a team in like Tennessee that won 57 games. They just dominate. We've talked about this on the podcast 100 times. Or would you rather be the team like Ole Miss that's the very last team to get into the college baseball tournament, go on a magical run, and hoist the trophy at the end of Omaha? Absolutely. Of course, you would pick hoisting the trophy. We all would. But I don't want to ramble on too much tonight. Just wanted to get on here and talk about the SEC college basketball in the SEC, kind of where we were, the power rankings for the week, since there was a lot more attention paid to that today than usual on a lot of the different groups. So that must mean that we're getting out of football mode a little bit. We don't ever get out of it completely. We got National Signing Day coming up. But as we kind of inch into college baseball season, we inch into college softball season, I definitely encourage you to read up on whoever your team is. I think the SEC in baseball, they are more dominant, in my opinion, in baseball than they are in any sport. Top to bottom, they're better in baseball than they are in football. And that's just a fact. Because if we really look at it, in football, we got Alabama, we've had Georgia, obviously LSU spent some time up there. But if we're actually going to talk about it, the SEC in baseball is a deeper league. Every single night you're going out there and playing a team that could beat you. Georgia quarterbacks making sure football stays relevant. That is true. So we will, you know what? I wasn't going to talk about that, Jim, but since you did, hey, controversy sells, baby. Stequavius Bennett gets arrested for public intox, and he was allegedly banging on doors, drunk, and gets arrested, spent some time in the drunk tank. And so I've seen a lot be said about this. And I even saw in our SEC, our focus group, that somebody had said that Stetson is doing all this to recover from his grief. Obviously, he did just lose a teammate. I'm not making light of that situation. Also lost one of the team managers. Very sad story with the wreck. But I think if you're Stetson Bennett and you're 25 years old and you're a multi-time champion, you're a leader of the team, you can't do this kind of thing, right? You can't go out there. You can't be drunk in public. You can't be screaming. You certainly can't be banging on doors. And you certainly can't do it in Texas. That's just the way that goes. So I've also seen a lot be said, and it just was Chris said, if Stequavius keeps making headlines, we won't ever get out of football. I mean, that is true. Or he was only arrested because he was in Dallas and he destroyed TCU. Well, Nikki, you were the one that kind of pointed it out to me that Dallas is not a big fan of TCU. So really, they should have let him go, right? I mean, they should have just rolled up like, oh, it's Stetson Bennett. We appreciate what you did to Sonny. We're sad that he left us over here in SMU. Let's take you to your car. Let's take you to your apartment, whatever it was. But they only arrested him because he was yelling 65-7 when he was beating on doors. Yeah, that's actually what I told a friend of mine today. I hope that when he was doing it, he was at least yelling 65-7, probably not knowing that he was in Dallas and not where actually TCU is from. So again, we broke it all down. I'm going to try to get back more regular about this in the month of December. I think we were pretty regular with content. Took a little bit of a break. It's been a really busy January for myself and work and everything, but going to try to get a little bit more consistent, especially as we get deeper into basketball. We get into February, and before you know it, we're into March. If you don't already like our page, it's SEC Focus Facebook page. We'll go live from there every time. We also put a lot of content on that page. Nikki, Chloe, all the people over there, Chris, do a great job of putting that stuff out. And again, if you're into college baseball smack, get in that group. And if you're into college baseball, or if you're into listening to athletes tell their story, not the controversial stuff, just telling their story the way they want it told, promoting themselves, go on Spotify, go on Apple, check out In Off the Bench podcast. Again, you'll go on there, you'll see 3 pretty mugs. I don't have it up here right now, but that's me, Jim, and DB, high school teammates from a long time ago. We graduated 21 years ago from high school. I had to do the math in my head, take off my shoes. It was weird. But we're just getting out there. Started this podcast after a long time, letting the athletes tell their story. Jim has done a great job getting the guests. We've also been able to get these athletes some NIL money. I mean, this thing has really been a dream come true for us and to them, to get to them to tell their story. We've had Vitello on, and we're only going to continue to get bigger, right? As the guest list just keeps growing, the stories keep getting even better. So join us there. But for this week, for SEC Jeezy, for the SEC Focus podcast, until next time, I'm out.